During a trip to his favorite strip club in Nagoya, Tanimura Masayoshi was having the time of his life. Crime may never rest, but sometimes justice needs some sweet R&R. You know you do it too. However, after going to the bar, Tanimura was laced and incapacitated by a monstrous alcoholic entity known as Mr. TDF, and being driven by his desire to showcase the depths of the criminal underworld to his viewers in the form of video essays. Now captured inside of a hellish labyrinth by Mr. TDF, Tanimura must give his intel through his own perspective while simultaneously trying to escape. What characters will appear in these underworld files? Only time will tell, for this is the Tanimura Files, complete series.
The wicked scum of Kamurocho can often find themselves back on their feet and ready to do harm once again. Or perhaps they'll do something more peculiar, like turning a new leaf years later. Now, the three guys I'm talking about today may not quite fall under redeemed villains, so to speak, but instead ones that manage to crawl their way back into the series in spotlights unrelated to the main story. Instead, you gotta go out of your way to find these guys through exploring the open streets, dingy alleyways, rooftops, sewers, you name it. And I'm not alone today. I have a special guest to help me explore the tales of these three ex-foes. You see, I found Tanimura.
You've got to help me. I'm being held hostage by this sick maniac.
That's just maniac to you. I'm feeling better. These are the Tanimura Files, and this is the hidden storylines of villains in Like a Dragon.
Well, there's still word out there that Arase Kazuto is still gunning people down, but only those that have harassed others. Perhaps a change of heart, maybe?
Maybe Arase finally tried Thai food.
That'll do it.
Arase first made himself known during the 10 billion yen incident in late 2005, where he was a dual pistol-wielding enforcer for the Nishikiyama family. He's known for his bright red suit and sunglasses, dressed like a diva version of the Amon clan.
Don't bring up the Amon clan. I still get emails from them.
Tough luck! And wouldn't you know, Arase had tough luck after he had a fateful fistfight with the Dragon Dojima on a rooftop near the hotel district in Kamurocho. He shouldn't have brought guns to a fistfight with the dragon.
There are some things in life you just can't parry. And let me tell you, Kiryu-san was one of them. That and Nair. And I'm sure Arase found that out not once, but twice.
Absolutely, Mr. Parasite. Now, sadly, Arase and his crew were responsible for the deaths of Kiryu's old buddies, Shinji and Reina, a fact that still tears at the heartstrings even years later. You can just feel that primal rage Kiryu exerts when he realizes he was too late. And you just know he feels responsible since it all ties back to Nishiki himself. Now, the boss fights, depending on the version, are virtually the same with Arase, save of course for the upgrades the Kiwami version got since it was made a decade later. You might find Arase a bit more frustrating in that one since he can heal, and you have to do certain Kiwami moves on him to prevent that healing, coupled with sometimes inconvenient staggering mechanic you get from getting shot in Kiwami. And against a gun boss, it's just not smooth if you haven't visited that game in a while.
Being swarmed by a boss with guns and a wrecking crew isn't fun. However, it gives you more justice to serve out. And I'm sure that Kiryu-san delivered on that. Not once, but twice, for Arase.
Right, because that wouldn't be the last we'd see of Arase. He later reappears in 2009 as a secret boss once you complete all of the Reaper missions in both Kamurocho and Ryukyu. His moveset is closer to his PS2 version and he's a lot quicker, plus at first he'll be supported by another Reaper boss using Majima's moveset. I made a video earlier this year about Kashiwagi and how he tied into the honest living association he created, but there I kept it vague on who the final Reaper boss was. So think of this as a sequel to that video.
Well, a sequel would be nice.
Us Thai guys have to stick together, Tanimura. Now, this other Arase fight is also coupled with his theme from the original returning in a new rendition named End Point, which fits this being the end of the Reaper fights. I also dig how it takes place in the Millennium Tower. Essentially, this fight gives Arase much more character than he ever had in the original. Usually I don't like to say things like that, but this is an exception. Arase may be another guy wanting vengeance on Kiryu for beating him last time, but it's still a personal fight for both sides. Remember, this is a Kiryu who's trying to grow into a new life, even if that means not holding a grudge against the guy who killed two of his old friends. So, Arase's story ends here with him vowing a rematch with Kiryu, and he leaves. However, he would actually reappear in 2011 during Dead Souls as an ally for Kiryu. While I haven't experienced Dead Souls yet for myself, it's super neat that Arase's story carries over into such a unique spin-off. Hopefully it gets a new release soon and Arase is given proper closure and the main timeline.
Where was I during 2011? Oh, that's right.
Next, let's talk about a less violent antagonist, that being Mr. Poundmates himself, Gary Buster Holmes. I love this guy, and to be blunt, I'll tell you right now, he's still appearing to this day. But how did we get there with Holmes? Originally a prime combatant and champion of Purgatory in the early 2000s, Gary Buster Holmes first fought Kiryu in 2005 during the 10 billion yen incident, and later in 2006 during the Jingwan Mafia conspiracy. It was during the second appearance where he donned his signature spiky ball fists, known as the GBHG. He wears them with utter pride, and they can even be equipped by Kiryu and Kwami too. Judging by Gary's construction helmet, it's clear that Gary is the big muscle man of Majima construction, and would help in Majima's many battles against the legendary wrestlers doing real estate. Call it the construction wars, if you will. From then, Gary would continue working on building Emerald Hills, but wouldn't be explicitly seen until 2010. Here he got into a fight with Kiryu not out of malice, but because he simply wanted a good old rematch. A much healthier reason than the revenge that Arase wanted. I like the setup here since Kiryu was told by civilians that there was a ghost haunting Emerald Hills, only to find out it was, well, Gary.
Oh, well. Gary Buster Holmes, huh? He was one of the prime combatants of Purgatory during its heyday, and even stuck around for Majima construction once the Mad Dog took over from the Florist. Now, I've dealt with the Florist a couple of times, but I have used Gary's Poundmates company a couple of times underneath an anonymous name. And let me tell you, his business is perfection. It's gotten me out of a few scuffles. Yeah.
Similar to Arase, however, Gary would appear in Dead Souls with his own boot camp that trains civilians on how to use firearms. Honestly, this makes sense for him to do since he already wears camo pants all the time. It's also interesting to see a different side to Gary because he's one of the few Americans in the series. God, I can't wait to play Dead Souls and meet Gary while donning Kiryu's American outfit and even Majima's power outfit. It's kind of funny how that power outfit came back today, if you know what I mean, wink wink. All of these rather brief appearances by the big spiky ball muscle man may seem inconsequential, but I see them as indicative of a man just trying to make his way in another country. Did Holmes simply end up stranded in America after being in the military, or did he just flee to Japan in hopes of a new life? Was he actually in the military as we know it? Maybe Gary used to work with Joshi Kazama back in the day, who knows? What I do know, however, is that he would come back mightier than ever in recent sightings. You see, in 2019, he became a star member of Poundmates, a delivery service of dishing out pain to jobbers from every hive of scum and villainy, kinda like Tanimura mentioned. Gary would then meet Lord Shrub, aka Kasuga Ichiban, and help him in his many heroic adventures around Yokohama, Sotenbori, and even Kamurocho. And that's not all. You see, in 2019, he also became affiliated with some guy running the Joryu clan on the castle's Coliseum. It seemed like it was fate for Gary to return to the Coliseum, now as a playable character. Teaming Gary up with his fellow weirdos like Boss Gondawara and one of the Kamiyama twins is an amazing matchup of cheeky dumbassery. And in 2023, we'd find out that Gary even has a daughter named Chitose. I'm so happy that he started a family and it looks like they're back in America. But this time it's Hawaii, and once again the Holmes family is going on adventures with insane heroes. And you betcha that he returns in Pirate Yakuza. Overall, I think that Gary Buster Holmes shows that much like the themes of growth of the series, it's never too late to start again. Out of the 3 suspects in this video, I'd say he definitely had the brightest outcome since his days in Purgatory, and fitting enough, he was able to escape the realm of Purgatory and find a new life abroad. And wouldn't you know it, Gary Buster Holmes ended up creating a boot camp after all.
Oh, well, see, if Gary is what you call a working man, going from job to job but staying true to himself, like his big steel balls. Now, if you'll excuse me, I don't really want to talk about Lau Ka-long. But I have dealt with foreign threats before.
Now let's talk about another titan in the room. Another shadow from Kiryu's past that dates back to a confrontation from 1993. The ogre himself, Lau Ka-long. Lau Ka-long, a man who once tortured Kiryu just a few years after the Empty Lot event of 1988, and was one of his first major foes to bring the legend of the Dragon of Dojima to life. Long is the leader of the deadly Snake Flower Triad, and for years had been trying to usurp the Yakuza, and expand his territory in Japan. We learned that his jobbers were torturing a captured Kiryu with needles, and it looked like Mr. Kazi was in trouble until Big Daddy Shintaro Kazuma swooped in to save him. However, the rescue mission would end up damaging Kazuma's leg and forcing him to adopt a cane. This injury seems to show just how dangerous Long's triad was, and that this event left a physical mark on Kazuma and a spiritual one on Kiryu.
There we go. It's a window. It's gotta be some way out of here. Still following me, huh? Trying to talk about Lau Ka-long? Well, fine, I'll give you a little something. In fact, I wrote it here in my Revelation notebook. Let's see, Lau Ka-long. That's right. I heard rumors in the underworld that Lau Ka-long is still out there, miraculously surviving that goddamn headshot wound. Now, if that means other evil fucks can do that, then I'm a little concerned for Kiryu-san and my friends.
I find it criminal that none of the live-action adaptations use Lau Ka-long as an easy excuse to have a great fight, because he represents a few different factors as a character. For one, Lau Ka-long ties into Kiryu's early days as a dragon in Dojima. 2, he expands the underworld by showing there's more than just Yakuza and random criminals to deal with. And 3, he's a goddamn badass. Whenever you see Lau Ka-long in a fight, you just know he's gonna come pre-packaged with phases. Now, Lau Ka-long did play a role in the 10 billion yen incident where he worked with the big bald man Shimano, the steel Haruka in exchange for shady advantages, and the big sprawling plot that was unfolding. However, during his fight and remarks, it was clear he saw Shimano and all the Yakuza as mere idiots compared to him, which helps in showing what kind of a bastard Lau Ka-long is. Plus, as a weapons dealer, it makes sense for him to not really care about which Yakuza clan gets the higher edge. He just saw kidnapping Haruka as a real opportunity to fight Kiryu.
Blue cluing this shit. Now, I believe that Lao Kalong is just trying to sell weapons under a new guise. Now, whatever it is that you know, Mr. TDF, can't be any good, but I'm gonna go ahead and write you a ticket for kidnapping me right here. There you go. And you know what, Mr. TDF? Made you look.
Get a grip, Tanimura. Of course, it's on record that Kiryu pummeled Lao Kalong in that 2005 fight, and a beatdown that was a long time coming. But of course, that wouldn't be the last we saw of him. After that fight, he did send his legions of the Snake Flower after Kiryu and Date and Haruka in a gigantic car chase. Then in 2006, Kiryu runs into Granny White, who was a mentor to Lao Kalong and why he incorporates the White Lotus style into his moveset. It's neat that we get to learn a little more about his backstory, even if it is still vague, but in a series about fistfights, perhaps learning about your foe through their old master is enough. In a way, Granny White is like Long's own Santaro Kamaki. Now, Long himself would return next. Snakes like to crawl away and bite you later, after all. Such was the case in 2009 when Lao Kalong once again saw the opportunity to strike back at Kiryu by kidnapping Rikia during the Okinawa Resort and Black Monday conspiracy. This time the Snake Flower Triad took to the streets of Kamurocho to harass Kiryu, and I gotta say, it's certainly a long battle. I remember this one being fun, but it certainly felt like it dragged from street to street, like it was plucked out of Streets of Rage. And I love Streets of Rage. I'm only saying that because compared to the Tamashiro office or the Toto Hospital long battles, this Snake Flower one really felt brutal. Maybe I just don't remember the shakeups during the fight like the others, since it wasn't in a confined space, it wasn't in a building, and it was more like that long battle in the streets in Yakuza 0, where Kiryu had to fight and escape the Tojo clan all around Kamurocho. It just sort of blends in as much as your normal street fights. That's just me though. Anyway, the real showdown takes place on the rooftops near Kashiwagi's Honest Living Association castle as Kiryu duels Lao Kalong once again against the ogre. It's a fight where you can really use the fenced walls as a way to charge up heat and vicious combos, or just thug it out for like half an hour by blocking. It's up to you. Once the fight ends and it looks like Rikia truly is in danger, we get the big Uncle Joji Kazama, Agent Man, saving the day by disconnecting Lao Kalong from the server. And you'd think that'd be the end of a man who just got sniped through the head, but not quite. First in 2010, a man from the Snake Flower Triad ends up running into Kiryu and Tanimura, where they then take him to the super medical man Doc Emoto, the legend. You should remember this, Tanimura.
Lao Kalong, I knew he used to mess with my friends and allies in my home, Little Asia. He would always apparently run deals back in the day before I joined the force. However, after his supposed death in 2009, the Snake Flower Triad just disappeared. But I heard they were having some remnants of their forces acting in Kamurocho in 2016.
And then in 2016, a member of Snake Flower named Jiang appears in 2 side stories where he meets Kiryu. It turns out that the last remnants of Snake Flower have been trying to bomb the South Triad, which is really interesting as we get to see 2 triads beefing with each other. Kamurocho just can't catch a break, huh? The current boss of Snake Flower at the time was Sun, and throughout these 2 sub-stories you get to see Kiryu confronting Zhang and Sun, which culminates in Snake Flower disbanding for the time being, apparently. This batch of sub-stories was a real treat, and coupled with the ghost photos of Lao Kalong, it really feels like so much time has passed during Kiryu's legacy. And in the same game where the Jingwan Mafia return, it was cool to see the Snake Flower Triad once again, only this time, they barely have enough forces to, well, chase you on the highway with a bunch of cars. Thank goodness. Then in 2019, it turns out that those ghost photos of Lao Kalong must have been some prank from the afterlife. or Lao Kalong finally got out of his coma in like 2017 or 2018, just spitballing on my end, but it would line up with him getting back on his feet and going under the name Chao Kalong and selling weapons in the sewers of Yokohama. The fact that he returned to Yokohama, where snake flour was originally established in Japan and is why they worked with Hamazaki back in 2009, is very telling. It makes you wonder if this is where Long was being held until he miraculously recovered. However, the mighty have fallen, and it seems that Chao Kalong is no longer with Snake Flower, and he's trying to hide from the Yakuza, apparently. And the fact that he's just a bridge away from Kashiwagi and the Bar District is hilarious. In 2019, he can appear as a pound mate for Ichiban, and of course sell him weapons once he passes his test. I guess Long and Kiryu have the same mindset on barely changing your name when hiding. Alright, here's the moment we've been waiting for. In 2023, the gods of hell yeah blessed us and we got to witness Kiryu Kazuma have a rematch of Lao Kalong. Only under their respective aliases of Taichi Suzuki and Chao Kalong. What can I say? We got to hear Ogre has returned, blast again as Kiryu and his new friends battle Long. And of course, this fight comes with his signature phases where he takes different weapons and he uses his fists eventually. Fan service done right. And this brings me to a more poignant ending. You see, I like the badass things in life, but I also love the sincere things. Here we got some closure to the feud between Kiryu and Long that's been going on since 1993, which means that 30 years later in 2023, they're finally able to bury the hatchet. The best part about this is they both knew who the other guy was, so much so that simply reappearing in their lives meant it was instantly time to fight. And yet, through one final fight and an exchange about keeping things quote-unquote professional, so to speak, they were able to move on. Both know the truth, and yet there's some kind of mutual respect between warriors. Both understand they're just trying to survive as old guys in a world that keeps trying to leave them behind. I've talked about the Kashiwagi story in a previous video, and in that I talked about how sometimes seeing a ghost can be a form of closure. I believe the same sentiment applies here to Lao Kalong, where Kiryu and someone from his past decide to keep up the facade of having new identities, but something in that encounter is enough to bring closure. And sure, the door may be open to a better future, but as of right now, you may never get that particular closure you had in mind, and perhaps it's better to make light of whichever small one you get. And that form of small closure seems to be a running theme with the three bosses I've discussed in today's video. Arase, Gary, and Long have all reappeared after their first appearance for a rematch or two, and they're all in a less hostile place than they were before, at least after a while in another fight. The fact that we've reached a point where they can end a fight with Kiryu with a talk instead of either bloodshed or a straight up knockout is fascinating. And it shows really how far these guys have come in their hidden stories. These three may have had hidden stories you have to seek out for yourself in the open sandbox, and yet it makes me take a different look at how time changes. None of these three were given any disservice in their subsequent appearances. Instead, we got to see how these guys from the underworld were trying to live their lives, even if that meant letting go of past grudges. And, I just hope that whenever we return to Kenrocho again in a future title, that they finally rebuild Little Asia after it burnt down.
You're telling me that Little Asia burnt down? My god, where have I been? Holy fuck.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Tanimura Files. I'm not done finding him. Until next time, check out my playlist featuring several Like a Dragon character analysis and topics over gameplay features. You'll find nothing else like it on YouTube. Take care, and go treat yourself.
Yeah.
The Like a Dragon series has had plenty of leaders in the form of chairmen and clan captains, with the most prominent being a certain Akala we all know. That's not all, however, as I want to tie this video into one of the most unique chairmen, or to be more blunt, the only woman we've ever seen take control of an entire Yakuza clan. That being Yayoi Dojima, a character who actually first appeared in the Yakuza 1 substory before taking a larger role in Yakuza 2. Then after that, she just disappears because her son, the puffy jacket gun-wielding coma-inducing shogun in his past life, went to high school with Shinada and once played by Roger Craig Smith, Daigo Dojima, took over in all the sequels. I hope I got your attention there. And don't you forget that this is episode 2 of the Tanimura Files. Previously on the Tanimura Files.
You're telling me that little Asia burnt down? My god, where have I been? Holy fuck. Damn it. Stuck in another fucking place.
Ho 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 ho! Tanimura, I wouldn't touch that if I were you. You can't touch a man's alcoholism shrine. I know they're empty bottles, but I take great pride in my work here at Tiger Drop Films, yes. Well, don't you know who I am? I'm Mr. Tiger Drop Films himself, the disgraced disciple of Kamaki. Ah, Tanimura, I needed you today for episode 2 of the Tanimura Files. Last time we talked about the hidden bosses of the Yakuza series that you have to discover yourself by venturing out in the open world. But today, Tanimura, I need you to give me your precious insights on the leaders of the Yakuza clans. Whether that's the Omi or the Tojo clan, I don't care. But I know you fought alongside one of them, that being Daigo Dojima. And did you know he has a hot mom?
Alright. Well, I suppose I'll play along the game for a little longer, Mr. Tiger Drop, you sick freak. So, talking about the Tojo clan chairman, are we? Let's get into this. I remember Daigo myself. Now, the police and the Yakuza have a long history together. They're practically two sides of the same coin. You can take it from me. Some of my greatest allies were ex-Yakuza. However, during my tenure at Tokyo PD, I had to battle Deputy Commissioner Murakata and his boy band. It was a pretty rough time. I'm surprised that Daigo Dojima had an even rougher time being a 6th chairman.
Yup, and his rough history as chairman goes back even further. First, we have to understand that Daigo and his mother had a pretty tumultuous decade following the death of the toad that was Sohei Dojima. And I'm sure the home life for everyone was already bad enough if we go back further and remember Sohei's scheme for the empty lot. And if we go back even further than that to the early 80s, Sohei was the one responsible for sending Kazuma and Shimano to attack foreign groups and Kamurocho.
You don't have to remind me about that one, jackass.
Someone had to mention it. Anyway, Sohei's long-standing history as a pillar of the Tojo clan that includes an abundance of violence and scheming coupled with the fact that he had swarms of mistresses, it's no wonder that Daigo saw Kiryu as his hero at a young age. Compared to the absent Sohei, even a young Kiryu was a saint that would be a great older brother role model to little Daigo. I'm sure Yayoi saw this as well, given that her and Kiryu go way back. From the scenes between Kiryu and Yayoi in 2005 and the openings of 2006, it was clear that Yayoi had a lot of faith in Kiryu, but was clearly divided since for a decade, Kiryu was known as Sohei Dojima's killer. Even when the truth came out, you can tell that there's still not animosity, but a bit of just a rift between them. It's very, very subtle though. It must have been very complicated and confusing for Yayoi and Daigo alike, given how close Kiryu was to them. I'm sure Kiryu was a positive light in their lives. However, the Dojima murder of 1995 definitely put a barrier between the three of them, especially if you see where Daigo's ended up around this time.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised that Sohei had so many side hustles when he had Yayoi. Now I've checked my intel and it appears that it's true that Sohei was the only man that Yayoi ever had feelings for. I can't believe it, but considering I had a mixed upbringing myself with the police force as well, I guess I'll just never really know why. It's a bit of a gray area. But to each their own. Now what I'm really surprised on is how Daigo really fits in all of this. I'm sure the poor guy had a really rough upbringing. And for a Yakuza's home life, I can only imagine how sketchy it could really be, especially for someone in a position like Sohei Dojima.
Well, the sketchiness may be a gray area, we'll never know for certain. Yet, if there's one thing I do know for certain, it's that Kiryu was able to further clear his name in 2006, when he actively worked alongside Yayoi, who then became the acting chairwoman of the clan after Terada was seemingly assassinated. I truly wonder what made her a candidate to take over though, and why wasn't she able to take over when Sarah was killed? Yayoi was definitely active during the events of the 10 billion yen since we saw her in the first game. Anyway, I still think it was pretty cool how Yayoi was able to fill the role of chairwoman at a very shaky time for the Tojo clan. She helped steer that whole flaming ship and gave Kiryu her blessing to go find Daigo. Seeing Daigo evolve during Yakuza 2 alone is such an amazing character beat. It really is where he shines, as he goes from being done with the Yakuza to feuding with Ryuji Goda, and ultimately taking the chance to lead over 300 members of the Tojo clan to battle the Omi and disarm the bombs they placed around Kamurocho. It's fascinating that Daigo had got to reveal his Irizumi, that Akala, here in only one scene, but it's a powerful scene that strikes a chord as his own mother gets to see him finally take control of his life. And not only is his mom there, for it was Kiryu and Kashiwagi also being present to see Daigo embrace the Akala he had inked on his back and rally the Tojo clan during their time of need. What I really like about this scene is how it shows the Tojo clan in a rare heroic light as they rally together to save Kamurocho. Just listen to the music cue as seen earlier when Daigo starts showing his leadership side.
柏木さん、その300人俺に預けてくれ。すぐに招集をかける。
登場会のために立ち上がってくれるんだね。
親父や風間のおじきが体を張って守ったこの町を郷田龍二のようなやつに好きにさせたくねえんだ。合流会を返り討ちにしてやる。大悟、お前。
So that's where his passion and inner charisma comes from. I gotta say, the bond between mother and son is pretty sweet. Now, Mr. TVF, will you show me some of Daigo's sweet gunslinging?
That's right. Earlier we saw Daigo save his mother after Kiryu gave Shindo a good old beatdown all across the Tojo clan HQ.
The whole situation of Shindo betraying the Tojo clan ended up showing how easy it is to have rogue Yakuza seemingly on your side. Plus, it gave Daigo himself a taste of what to expect in the future. I just don't think anyone expected Shindo to be a MILF hunter in disguise. Oh, MILF hunters. They're everywhere. And wouldn't you know, Daigo went hunting himself and put a round of shrapnel in Shindo, ruining more than just his squeaky clean suit. Hey Tanimura, do you love MILFs?
Mr. TDF, I love MILFs as much as I love justice. And gambling.
Alright. So that was our first taste of Daigo being incredibly overpowered with firearms. But it also showed how quick he is to protect others. He would do similar things in 2009 and 2012. And well, there was a certain other thing he used guns in.
Someone please come in. Oh, so do you mean like that kind of bizarre dream guys like us have?
Oh, yes, that being Dead Souls in 2011, where we got to see a cross-dressing Daigo and plenty of gun action from him.
Okay, we'll chalk that up to Majima.
So it's clear from pretty much every major event to happen to the Tojo clan in the 21st century that it somehow ties back to Daigo himself. Sometimes it may be a more direct event that sidelines him, such as with Mine, Munakata, and Suga, or Daigo will even take initiative himself and settle things in his own terms. The climactic fight he had with Kiryu atop the Millennium Tower was a long time coming, but it was pivotal for the both of them. While Daigo was still deep down the man who made his mother proud years earlier by taking charge, there was still a bunch of growing pains that came with leadership. If Yayoi herself had stuck around, I think she'd only be in more danger. I mean, if you look at the things that happened to Kashiwagi and Majima, it was clear that the antagonists were only gonna play dirtier as the years went on, and I mean way dirtier than Shindo. The duel with Kiryu helped Daigo realize how complicated the heavy cross of leadership can be, so much so that I believe it inspired Daigo to take the first steps towards victory in Yakuza 5. Sure, he goes off the radar, but considering that the Omi's own chairman did the same damn thing, it was cool to see the opposing leaders of two factions both go into the shadows in order to outplay each other. Daigo versus Kurosara. Certainly the strangest game of chess I've seen played, and yet it was ultimately badass.
Well, it seems that Yayoi and Kiryu were good enough role models for Daigo that their convictions inspired him to take strong chances of his own. Now, I just can't believe that the East and West factions of the Yakuza clans disbanded. I wish I was there, damn it!
Daigo evolved from being a mere town drunk to ultimately once again living up to that Akala Irizumi on his back, and taking a gigantic step he can never back away from. Working alongside fellow legendary leader Watase, in 2019, Daigo seemingly ended the two largest Yakuza clans, but it wasn't easy. At the very least, while the days after the disbanding were dark, Daigo still got to fight alongside Kiryu in order to stop the uprising of Yakuza and make him proud. While there are certainly different ways I could have framed Daigo's legacy here, I want to go back to an older video of mine where I said Daigo was like a son to Kiryu. I still think that to be true, since Daigo is as much his son as Haruka is his daughter. They're both different aspects of Kiryu, and are still two people whose lives he made better throughout the years, much like how Kiryu made sure to clear things up with Yayoi Dojima. Kiryu's just the kind of guy to set things right. And if there's one thing Daigo has made an impact on, it's turning the Dojima name into his very own, and surpassing the twisted legacy of his father. With the dragon of Dojima on his side, there's no doubt that the dragon is now affiliated with Daigo's legacy
through and through. Father and son, dragon and Akala.
I hope Daigo's out there somewhere doing his own thing, like I am right now. And I've gotta say, I think that Daigo and his mother Yayoi were probably the best leaders the Tojo clan had in recent years. Now, that is to mention that a lot of the Tojo clan and Omi Alliance's chairmen are pretty much wrapped in mystery somehow. I wonder if it's because you have to be almost assassinated or put in some big scandal in order to be remembered as a chairman. Who knows, Yakuza's leadership is pretty weird. But I do have to say that the big leaders of the Tojo clan and Omi Alliance have gone and come, in glory and in villainy. But no matter what, one thing I can say for certain, and through a little bit of personal experience, is that Daigo certainly left a mark on the history of the underworld. And as for the Tojo clan, who really was their original founder, Makoto Tojo? Who really was he? Perhaps we'll find out in the revelation. But until then, for all things justice, next time, I feel like I really need to dive into Kiryu-san's history and his past allies. I heard one of his greatest and original allies was a man with a bat tattoo with ties to Little Asia. Bravo, Tanimura, bravo. And you know what? I'm not done with you yet. That's right, you're gonna stay in my clusterfuck of a labyrinth. Sheer fuckery as we go into the next episode of the Tanimura Files.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode of my new series. Let me know your favorite memories of Daigo in the comments below, and what are your thoughts on Yayoi Dojima? Do you think she should have returned in the series? Let me know in the comments below what you think about this mother and son duo and Yakuza leadership. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned. If you're clicking on this video, then you already know how much tragedy there is in the Like a Dragon series. And for a guy like Kiryu Kazuma, that certainly is the case. He's got a whole brigade of tragedy in his story that is also part of his legacy. With that in mind, this is episode 3 of my Tanimura Files series, and today we're only going to focus on 2 guys from 2 different eras of the series. That being Yakuza 0's Tachibana Tetsu, and Yakuza 3's Rikiya Shimabukuro.
This is episode 3 of the Tanimura Files, because I'm still having to work in tandem with that sinister Mr. Tiger Drop Films. But for episode 3, I'm going to talk about 2 of Kiryu-san's greatest allies from before my time meeting him, that being a certain man named Tachibana, and another certain man named Rikiya. So, join me today as we go into this case file of the most tragic allies of Kiryu Kazuma.
The 1980s were prime time for real estate, and the metal-armed Batman known as Tachibana, aka Li Hao, was owning the industry with his own Tachibana real estate company. One thing that always stuck out to me was the scene where he straight up turns off the power in Kamurocho, like some kind of X-Men character. It's one of those Like a Dragon scenes that's never really brought up again in the story, but visually it illustrates to us how much power Tachibana has with real estate alone. And at the same time, This shows his ambitions for wanting to grab the Empty Lot's deeds from the Tojo clan and Omi alliance.
I suppose that was well said. Well, I gotta add that the citizens of Little Asia, from my personal experience, have always been, well, under the stomping heels of the Yakuza. Even though the Yakuza have supposedly defended Japan. But in this case, the two Tachibana siblings are definitely the result of a violent act by the goddamn Yakuza. And I can certainly see why this helped shape Kiryu as a man. A young man in his 20s willing to rise and be a true, noble character. And well, I certainly feel bad for old Tachibana.
Alright, Tanimura, let's jump ahead a bit and compare the ink of these fellas. Tachibana has a bat tattoo on his left forearm, being a bat with holes in his wings. I think this makes sense considering he's missing his right arm from a health condition, and has a lot of skeletons in his closet due to his upbringing. Born as Li Hao in China, to a Japanese mother, he grew up facing racial prejudice alongside his sister, Xiao Kuai, aka Makoto Makimura. Later on, we learn that their grandfather on their mother's side was the original Empty Lot owner, Genzo Makimura. Now, we don't usually see arm tattoos in the series unless they're accompanied by other tattoos on the body, but in the case of Tachibana, I think it's awesome and parallels Wen Hai Li's arm tattoos based in Chinese mythology. And it's cool that both of those characters have some connection to Makoto herself. Anyway, let's add on to this and see how Tachibana's bat differs from evil Oda's bat tattoo. Oda's, as we can assume, is to be more like the complete ones we'd imagine from their own gang, like that design we see when the characters in the plot are trying to go after that old gang, as it's a bat that is complete with fire and not at all withered. However, one other detail I like about Tachibana's bat is that instead of being surrounded by strands of fire, he's instead accompanied by 2 pairs of leaves. Maybe a few more if you count some of the background detail. That more peaceful aspect, that nature aspect, plus his damaged wings, says a lot about not only his rough upbringing, but also Tachibana's state of mind. He's a guy that has lots of ghosts in his closet, such as his guilt for leaving Makoto back in China when he was only 15. So he left her at a pretty young age in their relationship. The story of Yakuza 0 really picks up once we see in later chapters the reveal that there's more to Tachibana than him just being a mere client to Kiryu and providing him sanctuary and a job. There's just more to the guy. If there's one important detail that Tachibana has in relation to our boy Rikia, it would be their connection to big, mysterious daddy Shintaro Kazuma. For Tachibana, he was a prime real estate agent working with Shintaro, even though Shintaro was in jail, in order to retrieve the deed to the Empty Lot and prevent the ugly mug Sohei Dojima from rising to power in the Tojo clan. For Rikia, he was determined to find the man who shot his big King Caesar daddy, Shigeru Nakahara, and the only lead he had was a sketch of Beautiful Eyes twin man Joji Kazama, done by Saki. Man, what the hell am I writing? Anyway.
Man, that Oda guy sure seems like a real bastard. Kinda reminds me of Katsuragi in a way.
You need a stamina spark or something, Tanimura. Get energized. Anyway, I think it's cool that both of these characters, Tachibana and Rikia, tie back to Shintaro Kazuma in some way. It relates to the ongoing plots back to Kiryu himself in a personal way, while also giving him a spiritual obstacle to overcome. In Yakuza 0, the stand-in Tojo clan chairman at the time asked Kiryu if he knew the kind of man Shintaro Kazuma was, to which Kiryu replies, not really, old man. That was when Tachibana was giving the Tojo clan 10 billion yen just to get Kiryu's head off the target chopping board. With that in mind, the old chairman tells Kiryu that Shintaro is a man worth 10 billion, and back in the day he would have easily pay that amount of money to have Shintaro on his side. And then he looks at Kiryu and says he's looking forward to seeing if Kiryu himself is truly worth that amount of money. It's a small detail, but I think it encapsulates Kiryu's journey in Yakuza 0, especially to the extent that he fights for the Tachibana siblings.
Well, now I need to dive into Rikia, a man that Kiryu met before he met me. And well, let's just say he truly was a defender of Okinawa and Ryukyu.
Then you get Yakuza 3, where Kiryu is a much older man than he was in 0, of course, and is now haunted by his past, when Kazama seemingly comes back to life and starts shooting those close to him, Daigo and Shigeru. Of course, we know it ends up being his almost twin brother, Kazama's younger brother, and this plot point alongside Rikia's determination to find Joji shows how far Kiryu's come in his journey as a mentor. I've said in an older video about Joji that his inclusion was a way for Kiryu to physically and spiritually move on from Shintaro's shadow, and that still applies here. Whether it's Yakuza 0 or Yakuza 3, Kiryu's always been the kind of guy to forge his own path, even if the entire criminal underworld is against him. That's because no matter Shintaro Kazuma's mysterious history or parental influence, Kiryu's always had that innate trait of following his dragon instincts, if you will, and defending those who can't. This brings me to Rikia's Viper Irizumi, and you better not call it a snake, cause you'll piss him off. It's a viper, damn it. Rikia's Viper is a native animal to Okinawa, and from that first confrontation in downtown Ryukyu, early on in the game, we get to see how much Rikia devotes himself to his home turf. He wears that viper with pride, and it's satisfying to compare and contrast his first encounter of Kiryu to their bromance brawl later on in that wrestling ring outside Morning Glory. Good stuff. The viper may look sinister at first, but that's only because it bears its fangs against evil doers. It's also accompanied by nature in the form of some Okinawan plants, giving it something in common with Tachibana's damaged bat with the leaves. I'd even go as far as to add that both of these inks have quote-unquote something missing to them. The holes in Tachibana's wings reflect his past and longing to reunite with his sister Makoto, while Rikia's Viper is explicitly missing the dot on its eye. If there's one thing I miss from classic Yakuza games, it would be sub-stories that have a fancy cutscene or two that you'd get from the main story. For Rikia, that'd be the dotting the eye sub-story in Kamurocho, where we get to see the legendary Ink Man Beard Master Udabori, the same fella who created Kiryu and Nishiki's Irizumis years ago. What a beast. The way Rikia still acts almighty and prideful of his Okinawa Viper, his heritage, still gets a few chuckles out of me. Just look at Udabori's reaction. Like, man, Rikia, give the old guy a break. Udabori's art is still incredible, you know. Nonetheless, this sub-story gives a very sweet layer of depth to Kiryu and Rikia's dynamic. I like to imagine Kiryu took Rikia here after their discussion about Kashiwagi while on the swings and that one park in Kamurocho. During that discussion, Rikia let Kiryu vent about losing Kashiwagi and what kind of legend he was, cold noodles and such. And I think that it was here that led to Kiryu deciding to have Udabori finish Rikia's Irizumi by adding the eye. It just feels like something that Kiryu would do. A friendly exchange, if you will.
Damn. It's always the innocent that get taken out in these Yakuza clan wars.
Yeah. Well, Tanimura, you sure are a lot gloomier today.
Really now, Mr. Tiger's Films. So you're telling me that Kiryu-san helped this Rikia fellow finish his Irizumi? I guess you can really find anything in Kamurocho.
Just must be the episode's content. Anyway, Rikia finally getting the eye on his Viper finished ends up working symbolically for his character's fate. Throughout all of Yakuza 3, Rikia becomes a beloved character for a reason. He's that sort of sidekick that grows on you and has a catchphrase you can't forget. Anarchy! Just look at the way Rikia jump-scared me here at Morning Glory. Check it out right now. And then when you go back to Yakuza 0 and look at Tachibana as a character, he comes off as rather cold but highly intelligent and intuitive during his first couple chapters. However, by the time he saves Kiryu from Enma boxing man Kuze by running the old man over with his sports car,
yeah, I certainly would have hated to have met this Kuze guy.
we then get to see a more vulnerable side of Tachibana with his health condition that made him lose an arm years ago. The effects of the condition still bother him, to the point that later on he overextends himself during the Tojo Clan HQ long battle. It's cool that he was also an ally during combat like Rikia was. Furthermore, I'll never forget the reveal that Tachibana was the actual man with the bat tattoo that Majima was looking after alongside Lee. During this whole time, oh man, just looking back at it, talk about storytelling that paid off, huh? Later on, we get two parallel scenes that I see as some of RGG's best ways to show the longing between two characters, that being Makoto and Tachibana. First, there's a scene in a club where Kiryu is letting Makoto vent after saving her, where she then describes what it's like to grow up in China and the other hardships that came with moving to Japan. As a mixed person myself, I can tell you, it's not always easy. We get to see her perspective as she breaks down about her brother, and also provides a growing Kiryu a moment to inspire her. Lift her up and tell her to hang on. It's not too different from how Kiryu diffused the Nishiki situation earlier in the forest. Likewise, a few scenes later we get to hear Tachibana's angle when he's on the hospital bed in Little Asia. The way he refers to Makoto by her birth name is very tender, and shows that beneath all the real estate nonsense, Tachibana is still a guy with regrets and actual aspirations that are human. And like with Makoto's soliloquy, Kiryu lifts Tachibana up and sees the best in him. For a prequel, Yakuza 0 certainly had wonderful, subtle ways of making Kiryu the guy we all know him to be later on. Sadly, however, that territory also comes with tragedy. Kiryu's lost a lot over the years, plenty of other characters I could mention. For today though, Yakuza 0 and Yakuza 3 both have some of the most heartbreaking climatic scenes that really put you in Kiryu's shoes. I won't show the entire footage for either of these sad death scenes, since it's something that's better just to put the controller down and watch yourself when you replay the game, but they simply pull at the heartstrings. Stop cutting the onions, damn it! Who's cutting the onions? Who's cutting the onions anyway? Is it you, Bacchus? Oh, it's probably Kanai. More so, those two scenes also highlight Kiryu's determination to finish the fight in the final chapter of these respective games. The tragedy of these characters in turn become determination for Kiryu and the player alike, as it's up to you to stop these antagonists and restore order to ordinary life. That might just be part of the magic that is the Like a Dragon series, a perfect melody of narrative and gameplay alike. A reason to keep going in the face of tragedy.
Man, it's another rainy day in the big city, out in Tokyo. And no one's answering me. I hope Kiryu-san can save me. But looks like what to say myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I gotta say that after learning about today's events, a lot has shaped old Kiryu, Mr. Kaze, as a character, as a man. And I can only hope to keep doing that myself. Inspiration from old foes, like old Sakuchi, for instance. A fight with him truly shaped my identity as an officer of the law. And well, I guess, as for you, Mr. Tiger Drop, I guess you need me for another one, don't you? Gotta find some way to get out of here.
Well. That wraps up this episode. But stay tuned for the next one, episode 4 of the Tanimura Files. Next time we're gonna get sketchy, we're gonna get schemy, we might even get sexy. Thanks for watching. I've been Tiger Drop Films. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah. Weirdos are out there. They're everywhere. These weirdos could be behind you right now as you're watching this video, or in front of you, like me. And since you clicked on this video, dear viewer, that means you like looking at freaks, don't ya? This is episode 4 of the Tanimura Files, and if you like this one, check out my previous episodes.
Alright, well, it's too bad. I forgot my fighting style.
Kamurocho, Sotenbori, Honolulu, your backyard. You name it, everywhere you go in the Like a Dragon series is a chance to encounter some serious weirdos roaming their own territory. Going through the plethora of sub-stories in this franchise is like going on a safari of mundane aspirations and the goofiest shit ever. These weirdos can make you laugh as much as they unexpectedly make you tear up too. That's the beauty of this franchise after all.
Well, I've encountered some real freaks at my time, being in Tokyo PD. However, in the time since I've been off the radar, a lot of these weirdos have still been resurfacing, while some have not. They've gone off the radar themselves. But nonetheless, these weirdos, these freaks, might be able to teach us something, as they re-enter our memories with the sheer bravado of their musk and their own sense of justice, whatever that might be to them. So, as you can see behind me, I have some primary suspects, along with a bunch more we'll talk about today in this case file, episode 4 of the Tanimura Files. Now, first up is Saigo Daijiro.
Brilliant idea, you gambling freak. Saigo is certainly a fascinating fella in terms of the combat training masters in this series, and that's saying something. If there's one thing I can say about Saigo up front, it's that his seemingly made-up stories about his battlefield experiences might as well be true now in 2025. In Pirate Yakuza, you legit fight a giant robot as Majima in the campaign. And if there are people role-playing as pirates these days and people capturing other freaks known as Sujiban, then I'm sure there's some truth to Saigo's wisdoms of warfare.
There was my good buddy Akiyama, who was the star pupil of Saigo-san. Now, he would teach Akiyama many different ways how to survive through his suicidal training regimen, including running, shooting, and combat. Now, as for Saigo himself, he was a master of different fighting styles, including Southeast Asian kickboxing, Jeet Kune Do, and of course, a submachine gun. He definitely knows his own sort of gun fu style. Never fun to go up against unless you bring your own firepower, or your own infinite handcuffs, if you will. Now, Saigo also usually has his own entourage of his followers, his pupils, standing around him while he gives them his own words of wisdom. As for me, well, I remember coming across Saigo when he was telling his students about the power of reheating curry days after it was still edible.
I wish I had some curry right now, damn it, but alas, I can't. It's not easy being a real Renaissance man. Now, Saigo would appear in both 2010 and 2012 to teach Akiyama. Notably, during his Sotenbori era, he staged his own assassination in front of Akiyama just to make his marketing video that much more dramatic. See what I mean? Saigo was doing weird internet shit back in 2012. I genuinely believe his weird battlefield stories. Then in 2016, Saigo would travel to Unamichi, where he was down to battle Kiryu as a mini-boss of sorts. He's still being a weirdo with talks of gambling his savings or something like that, but I like that he travels to different cities throughout his 3 appearances. Saigo may not be the only weird trainer in the series, since the likes of Sodachi and Leo are definitely fellow high points, but I will say that Saigo certainly is a freak beast of his own. And speaking of freaky beasts, let's talk about the guys who are the anti-clothing caliber. Patriarch Boss Gondwara and Mr. Libido.
Now, you'd think that Boss Gondwara and Mr. Libido would be 2 sides of the same coin, but not quite. Sure, they both like to dress as almost naked individuals in their birthday suits, however, they follow different paths of life, although they both are involved and wrapped up in their own fetishes. If you've been in Kamurocho long enough, especially on Pink Street, you think you've seen everything. Well, let me tell you, you never see everything when you're in Kamurocho. There's always more to be seen right behind you, or in some weird musty alleyway. Nonetheless, Boss Gondwara and Mr. Libido are the kind of fellas that are technically harmless if you let them do their own thing. I remember whenever I had to get money for gambling, I would probably talk to individuals like those if they would help me get some intel on some civilians I need to look after. For Boss Gondwara, he loves to live his life as a literal baby roleplay, despite being a Yakuza clan boss. And for Mr. Libido, well, his entire existence is that of a walking plank.
I see. So they're both pharaohs of pleasure.
Sure, Mr. TDF, sure.
Mr. Libido may just be the incarnation of RGG Studios going, sure, let's put this real guy in our video game. And you know what? Why the hell not? Let's watch him dance for an entire minute.
Well, anyway, through the drain of intel of justice that I heard about, it appears that Boss Gondawara is more noble than I gave him credit for. I guess there's more to diaper-wearing men than meets the eye.
I'd say so, because by 2024, Boss Gondawara turned out to be more of a noble Yakuza than the majority of quote-unquote normal Yakuza seen in the series. Well, let's back up first, because he first met Lord Shrub Ichiballs in Yokohama during 2019. It was a revelation in of itself that the man's clan was still doing their shtick ever since 2006, which goes to show that Kiryu didn't try to diminish their kink or anything. He's not that kind of guy. Wow, what a sentence. Well, jump back to 2024 and he reunites with Ichiban in Honolulu, which is actually the perfect weather for these baby men weirdos to migrate to. If you played Infinite Wealth, do you know just how much juxtaposition there was in his sub-story? The moment I saw those self-driving baby carriages pull up like absolute gangsters, I was on the damn floor laughing my arse off. Then, in a sudden turn that felt like I walked into a completely different sub-story, it turns out that the elderly man Ichiban saw earlier, demanding for snow cones, was actually trying to bring the magic of snow to his ill wife one last time. From then on, if you played it, then you know how it goes. So I'll just say this. Seeing Boss Gondawara and the baby men help an old man bring magic, winter magic that is, to his wife in Hawaii might just be the definition of a legendary Like a Dragon sub-story. Just don't think too much on how they got the snow in the first place.
Weirdos can certainly be strange. However, I'd liken them to be more kin to a spirit guiding you down the right path. And through the little adventures I've had in Kamuro, that's definitely the case. And for some of these weirdos, they do just that. Enter Mac Shinozaki, a man that mastered the power of revelations and is a nigh Olympic runner. Ah, Mac. I remember getting tidbits from him or texts on how he'd helped me find a spot to unlock the revelation. And ever since then, Mac, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well. But I still keep these vintage notebooks of mine where I write about my musings of justice and tranquility. And I even like to leave these little notebooks around Kamurocho, Yokohama, you name it, even Honolulu, for aspiring detectives or other law enforcement personnel wanting to learn about how they can deliver their own sense of justice. In fact, I'm gonna leave this one over here right now.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you get a haircut, Tanimura?
What do you mean, you washed up mutt? Mr. TDF, I didn't get a haircut.
Oh my god, alright. I didn't see anything. So, Mac is truly a different kind of weirdo, as he has helped several protagonists from the series unlock the hidden potential seen in everyday life by simple observations. I liken this approach to how martial arts practically started in the first place, or even all forms of combat, by sheer experimentation. If there's one thing you should take heart to heart about creativity in these trying times, it's that you don't have to hurt your brain by trying to make up some new idea from complete scratch. No. Instead, look around you and observe. People watch, like Mac has taught us. There's a concept known as bricolage, an art that I really admire, and it applies here to Mac's revelations. Now, bricolage is the art of taking things that already exist and reformatting them to fit a new context or perspective, therefore creating an idea. It's what I've practically done for this YouTube channel, Tiger Drop Films, and it's what you can do with all kinds of art. Whether it's painting, or writing, or music, you name it. It's a very human way of processing the things around you and drawing inspiration. And for Mac Shinozaki, that's his way of telling these characters to look around them and take these seemingly mundane situations that turn out to be weird and add the movements they witnessed to their own movesets. Or in the case of Yakuza Files Revelations, that also means unlocking new heavy attacks with weapons through repeated use. I'm still unlocking all those, by the way, but it's a lot of fun. Mac Shinozaki may come across as a very zany and larger-than-life guy, but he's the kind of thrill-seeker wanting the perfect shot. From Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, Mac tells these characters to make use of their phone's cameras to snap the perfect shot of a weird event and then reflect on it through a blog. I love going back and reading these characters' little remarks about the strange events they've just witnessed. It adds more life to all these districts in Japan beyond Substories or even Hostess quests. I even find it remarkable that Saejima was able to figure out how to use a 2012 flip phone in Yakuza 5. He sure came a long way from carving sculptures, huh?
Now then, Mr. TDF, let's round off this video with two more particular weirdos that I've heard recent updates about through the interwebs. After that, I'll wrap up this video with a revelation on the many weirdos seen throughout this lifetime.
I'd have to agree, Blue Jacket Man. Let's talk about Akari, the ultimate student, and Munan Suzuki, the reformed ex-cult leader. Akari is a devoted student to the Unibara Vocational School, apologies if I mispronounce that, where he takes pride in his now 250 plus certificates as of 2025. Somehow that weird vocational school minigame has appeared in 3 games now. I hope you feel old too. Anyway, Akari is certainly a weirdo, but one devoted to learning new concepts. For instance, he's back in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, where he tells a certain Goro-chan that he's been taking the new pirate certification courses, because of course they have those now. I think it's hilarious that Akari sees Majima as an absolute freak. It's like weirdos are drawn to each other. When it comes to Akari as a character, he's both a hopeless romantic and a driven learner. He helps Ichiban and Majima by giving them special abilities to take during exams, abilities I wish I had during my academics. Just look at the way Akari dances. Isn't that a man you want to learn the depths of knowledge with? I know you do too. Now, while I haven't completed the vocational school minigame for Pirate Yakuza just yet, I have completed it for Yakuza 8, and I can tell ya, the story he got in Yakuza 8 is almost an acid trip. I'll just let it play out right here for ya in incoherent clips.
特に頭がいいし、頑張ってるので素敵だなって。ずっと目をつけていたんですが。
資格だったら僕の方が持ってるじゃないか。僕も頑張ってるよ。僕はダメなの？春日の裏切り者。あ、イカリ、ちょっと待って。
春日さん。
ロラちゃん、待って。気持ちは嬉しいけど、俺には好きな人が。
大丈夫。私。愛人検定1級の資格を持っていますので本命さんと両立可能です。
なんだそのライセンスは。
大海原へレッツダイブ。
はにゃー。ぷー、なんかすごい子だったな。人は見かけによらないもんだな。カスカーん？わイカリ、マジですまん。落ち着けってな。許しまし。マシンガン決定取っておいてよかったよ。ててライセンスなんてゴリゴリだ。
Then you have reoccurring weirdos you wouldn't have expected to get an entire conclusion across decades in the RPG universe, if you played Zero first. Enter Munan Suzuki, who was once a con man in 1988, running the Order of Munan Kohep Onast as their first guru. And well, thanks to Dead Rising, every time I hear the word guru, all I think about is Lifeseeker's banger Gone Guru. Take that for what you will. To Suzuki's behest, his cult scheme would be thwarted, by Thrust Master Lord of the Night Goro-Chan, who monachoed all over the place. And he too monachoed on me. Now, while the Orders of New Disciples sub-story was probably just a comedic riff on things I'm sure happened in 1980s Japan, it actually ended up being such a memorable sub-story that someone at RGG decided to bring the cult back and Kiwami won, although that didn't have Suzuki himself in it. However, it was Yakuza 6 where Munon Suzuki himself would actually reappear, this time a much older man since it's almost been 30 years since Yakuza 0. This is the Sins of the Father sub-story, and one of my favorites in the entire series. It has such a nice message about how it's never too late to become a better person, and try to fix your own wrongdoings. Kiryu's ending quote for this sub-story sums up the whole message. It's a sub-story so good that you think it was enough closure for Munon Suzuki. However, it turns out there was a bit more to tell. Because after Yakuza 6, Suzuki would leave Unomichi and head to Yokohama. In fact, it was nice to see one of Kiryu's words of wisdom pay off in Yakuza 8, where we see Munon Suzuki trying to teach people over the internet how not to fall for the fancy words of cults. It's so cool seeing a person get better. And the parting words that Kiryu gives Suzuki at the end references what Kiryu told him all the way back in 2016. Now, Yakuza 6 has some of my personal favorite sub-stories ever, and I'm glad that Infinite Wealth gave Kiryu a sequel to at least 2 of those sub-stories from that game, including the Unomichi one. It's strange events like that which show how much of an impact meeting random people can have on others and yourself. If there's one thing we can all learn from all these weirdos, it's that it's better to be alive and weird, because it allows us to see what's out there in the world. The world itself may be big, and yet it's also very small and homey once you stop and enjoy how strange things actually are around you. Isn't that just weird?
Ah, yes. Weirdos, weirdos, weirdos. There are plenty of them out there, everywhere. And wouldn't you know it, they're on their own quest for justice at times. But let me give a rundown of some notable examples I've heard from allies and the goddamn internet. Firstly, Curry Man. What a guy. Next, Poison Mitsuo. I heard he once taught Kiryu-san how to flex in his underwear. Once again, we're talking about men in underwear. And speaking of naked men, I heard that in Honolulu, there's a certain fellow helping law enforcement there track down a bunch of perverts out there trying to strip and do the monacho hustle all over the streets and harassing innocents. Diabolical. Dr. Minamita. I remember him. He let us use his IF-8 machine to battle through our own memories. Incredible stuff. And I heard he's making good money off it now. And also, I want to highlight the legend I've heard from the bubble era, that being Miracle Johnson. Woohoo! He's such a dancer. And I gotta say, I've seen some of his music videos, and there was some young guy that looked like Kiryu-san, I remember. Weird. Professor Okita. He has a giant Roomba machine that can make pancakes. I gotta say, we may be able to fly to the moon, may be able to travel space, we have undersea exploration, and we have giant Roombas that can bake goods, but apparently we still can't fix my goddamn Wi-Fi. Bob, the Cloud Man. Yes. He would definitely give us some wonderful tools back in the day, but I heard he's really disappeared from the face of the earth. Maybe he's out there. There might be a bunch of them even. I remember he would chase us with a bunch of other clones of other clown clones throughout the streets of Kamurocho. I guess clowns always move in packs, but Bob, thank you for giving us all kinds of wonderful gear throughout the years, like this Boss Coffee. And well, I think that might wrap up all the weirdos for today's video. But there's always a plentiful amount of weirdos out there for us to discover, including you guys. Well, thank you for watching episode 4 of the Tanimura Files. Remember to drink your boss rainbow blend coffee, and stay tuned because I'll see you in the next one. Tanimura, out. And speaking of curry, I heard there's also a curry man still out there. Maybe he's dead, who knows. But if you really love curry, you can always come back to life. As for me, I love yellow curry. And green too. Mr. TDF, tell me, are you corrupt? Absolutely. That's how I get out of bed every morning. Those weirdos who sent after me were nothing but paper thugs. It's about time I stopped you too, you freak. Stop, Tanimura. Don't you dare. How dare you call my henchfreaks paper? You're the one that shot them, you damn parasite. Justice. You've lost your justice. Can't you just tell me everything you know about corruption? If you do, I'll let you go, I promise. And I'll even throw in a free set of sacred tree armor just for you. Well, that sounds like justice. Oh, perfect. Just head around the corner and you'll reach another room. It's my old wine cellar. Nice work you got there, Mr. TDF. Corruption. Corruption is everywhere. And corruption can be like a rabid monkey in your brain, telling you to dine and dash at your local Smile Burger. It's terrible. It's corruptible. With all that in mind, there are 3 individuals in particular, 3 suspects, I want to discuss for today's video. I'll also be bringing up accomplices that you guys might know of. The first of these is Kora Mitsuru, and then Kurahashi Wataru. And last but not least, one suspect in particular that we've lost, but has a key connection to myself, that being Sugiuchi Junji. So now, Mr. TDF, let's get into it.
The one who almost put Hamura behind bars, before you two pulled him out of my grasp.
So what?
I've become a department punchline now. I have you to thank.
A real psycho can come from places you thought were safe. Sometimes that means law enforcement itself. Enter the Mole, aka Kora Mitsuru. His moniker of the Mole says it all. The guy is so invested in his craft that he's content leaving the facade as a top-line detective at Kamuro PD. He's an antagonist that stands out for a reason. It's refreshing to have guys you just want to beat up, and likewise they want to take you down too. Now I'd say the Mole is more so on the scale of Raymond Law or Sadamoto Kiyoya, in terms of just being evil dudes. Although I'd say these guys are more of the evil type that are an actual physical threat, compared to the still vile but are complete losers such as your Iwamis and Jengus. What makes the Mole especially eerie is how completely unsuspecting he is during about the first 2/3 of Judgment's plot.
And for me, Mr. TDF personally, I was taken off guard by the mole because of his actor, Tanimura Files. You see, when I was growing up, a billion years ago, I first saw him in 2000's Godzilla vs. Megagearus, where he played Kudo Hajime, a goofy scientist guy who makes robots and chibi anime AI avatars. Definitely a different character than being the murderous Koira here in Judgment, huh? There's one really cool thing about these games, it's seeing actors you saw growing up playing different roles.
Damn, Mr. TDF, you sure are old. Now, from my intel, I remember hearing about this situation of the mole. I certainly remember hearing shockwaves about this intel throughout the criminal underworld, when the whole mole crisis underwent and took over all of Kamuro. Now, this was tied back into what is known as the 89 crisis, and certainly went up the ladder in terms of our health field, and all the way down to the depths of hell, the likes of Korra and the Yakuza and the Matsugane family that were involved. Now I gotta say, with this 89 crisis, it certainly sent shockwaves out Kamurocho that I wish I could have been there to stop. But nonetheless, even before this 2018 crisis, in 2016, hearing about the little fires of Little Asia was already hard enough for me. The whole community was at stake. But now knowing that there was a legit serial killer that dates back in his own process, going throughout the alleyways of Kamurocho, sleeping behind every corner, and leaving a trail of blood that was almost untraceable. God damn it. I'm glad this Yagami guy took care of the mole.
Plus, the mole makes you start to question who you can trust. Corruption is murky enough as is, but imagine learning that one of your colleagues was actually a serial killer, dosed in self-revive syringes, and collaborating with another psycho in the health industry. I just hope that any colleagues I have in the future are not the type that take out eyeballs.
Yep. Korra was technically the lackey of a scientist named Shono Yoji, the creator of 89. How ironic. For a scientist trying to stop severe memory loss, he certainly lost his own judgment along the way.
And while Korra was the dirty henchman for Shono, that doesn't mean he was completely loyal. Like a true Decepticon, the mole still played by his own rules. After forging a deal with the Matsugane family captain, Hamura Kyohei, years ago, Korra was able to effectively work in both the underworld and police, and therefore understand how to walk circles around both. While not at all the scheming manipulator like other villains, instead, Korra's version of walking around others is more like a predator knowing where to find his prey in the wild concrete jungles of Tokyo, and he needed to satisfy his bloodlust. According to Hamura, Korra was mentored by a Tojo clan informant in his early years. Exactly what that entails is up to our interpretation, but judging from his pure onslaught against the Matsugane family and the burning hotel, the remains of the 89 test subjects he gouged eyes out of, the murder of suspecting bystanders like Chitani Masamichi, and lastly, the calculated viciousness of his two boss battles, it's clear as Soma's back that this Korra was an absolute destroyer.
Oh, I'll definitely take whatever serum the mole had in that hospital battle. It reminds me of what the villain in Ong Bak took during the final confrontation. You see, I lost all of my sacrifice stones because I went chicken racing in Nagoya. Damn it.
The mole is a textbook definition of an intimidating antagonist that knows how to get the job done. The duel between him and Yagami in the hospital during a thunderstorm is one of the most badass finales in this franchise. And it would turn out that the mole's own anger and his bloodlust would lead to his own demise, as he would be cornered by truth and justice in the form of Yagami, revealing Shono's own scientific horror to the world. And this is all because Shono really wanted to cure Alzheimer's himself due to his own personal experience. And while that may be a good reason to find a cure, the one he made was so wrapped up in his own misguided judgment that he truly believed it was actually going to work. But we saw how that ended up in the plot, and how 89 would end up killing its own creator, Shono. While you can never really take back what a murderer and egotistical scientist combo can do to innocent lives, at the very least we can let their souls rest by defeating the menace with a punch of justice to the face, and throwing a couple more punches for good measure. And for Yagami himself, I'll always remember how it was the ghosts of his own past that literally got him back to his feet in that hospital in the finale and encouraged him to defeat Koira and Shono. The figures that haunt us can also remind us of what we need to do. I'd say that's good judgment we need.
So that's why. I finally understand.
Well, what do you know it? I have just a case file for this, my Memoirs of Justice, volume 542. Kurohashi Wataru, his real name being Ji Young-mi, his Korean birth name. We're talking about another member of Tokyo PD, but this time one that was actually a secret Jingwon Mafia agent, a survivor, plotting revenge against the Yakuza clans of East and West. If my intel serves me right now, Kurohashi was apparently a brother of sorts to Terada Yukio, aka Kim Daijin. Nonetheless, both men are members of the original Jingwon Mafia stationed in Kamurocho, around Theater Square, who witnessed the massacre carried out by the old bastard that was Sohei Dojima. Now, he also sent out Kazuma and Shimano to destroy this community, trying to survive, although it was Kazuma's old-fashioned noble spirit that led him to spare the young Terada and Kurohashi. I always knew that Kiryu-san was different from the rest, but knowing that his old mentor was Kazama-san just makes sense.
The reveal of Kurohashi being a Jingwon survivor may be one you forget considering how many turns there was in Yakuza 2's plot in 2006, but I'd argue that this reveal helps build up Terada's return in the climax. Sure, Kurohashi may be a character from that game you probably don't think of first when Yakuza 2 comes to mind, but he still illustrates to the audience and the characters alike how far the Jingwon Mafia still existed. Plus, Kurohashi being a quote-unquote elf brother of sorts to Terada makes sense considering one of them joined the police and the other joined the Yakuza. Now keep that dynamic in mind as it plays into a certain duo from Yakuza 4 later in this video.
君らが追っていた組織とは何なんだね。
人言派です。
人言派？何を言ってるんだ。人言派はとっくに壊滅したはずだ。
As someone who grew up accustomed to immigrant communities, pertaining to my own background in Kamurocho and Little Asia, I gotta say, I do have some empathy and sympathy alike for the Jingwon Mafia. After all, they left their homeland or just trying to survive in Japan. Although, the way that they were massacred by the partnership of Dojima, Kazama, and Shimano is definitely a horrific act that sent shockwaves years later in 2006. If my memory serves me right, here on page 72 for my research, I wouldn't be surprised that there are members of the Jingwon trying to survive even to this day in the form of an offshoot branch in Yokohama that became the Gomujiu.
The war in 1980 that the Tojo clan waged on the Jingwon Mafia set the tone for another bloodbath to arise in 2006 when all the survivors took different branches and would soon find themselves back in the eye of violence. In addition to Kurohashi and Terada, there was also the supreme badass known as Ryuji Goda, who was saved by the DILF detective Jiro Killer Korora at the final moments of the 1980 massacre. Then Korora would later on marry Goda's mother, Jung Se-hoo, Jung Soo-young, and later on have Karo Sayama with her. as his daughter, although Sayama wouldn't know about her past in order to keep her safe. Finally, there was Hojong Park, aka Marai, apologies if I mispronounce these names, who also survived. He was that old shogi guy Kiryu and Sayama find in Sotenbori right before the Jinwan Mafia reveal their full appearance. With all this in mind, it's easier to see why this crime syndicate would want to take revenge on the Yakuza, even if some of the other survivors took other paths. Above all, it was still Kurohashi and Terada that took the most explicitly antagonistic path that put the pieces in play for a new war between the Tojo clan and Omi Alliance. Remember, it was Kuroshi's side of the plan that disrupted the Flores' new surveillance system and the Millennium Tower and caused the death of Korora right in front of Sayama. He may not have been part of the final battle of Terada, but he was still a player in the conspiracy that caused serious damage and impacted the story. That seemed to be part of Yakuza 2's style after all, a more focused perspective on how betrayal can come from seemingly anywhere, and corruption can be deceptively clever. Kurohashi made the police corrupt. Then guys like Takashima and Sengoku both had their own agendas in the Yakuza that made the Omi Alliance's once strong leadership begin to crumble. Oh, and you can't forget MILF Hunter, Shindo, and evil itself Hayashi, corrupting the plot with their own stank. Kurohashi Wataru may have posed a stint as the Tokyo PD's Division 2 Chief of Foreign Affairs, yet in actuality he was more than ready to cause a whole messy affair for everyone else. If there's one thing you want to remember this guy by, it's that he kidnapped the super detective Dilf that is Date, and then murdered the Magnum Force Dilf Korora. Stop attacking detectives, damn it.
Viewers, it all culminates to this moment right here. Because speaking of detectives, corruption almost always takes the lives of good, innocent people caught in the crossfire. That being my own father, as you just saw in that photo, my own adopted father, Taiki Tanimura. Now what happened to him? Well, he was murdered in cold blood by his own partner on the force, Sugiyuchi Junji. Now, why did Sugiyuchi do that? Well, you see, Taiki was a proud detective in Kamurocho. That is, until 1985, where he deduced that the killer of 18, Saejima, didn't really kill those 18 men at that Robin bar. No. Turns out it was actually the combined effort of Katsuragi, Isao Katsuragi, whose real oath brother was my own father's partner on the force, Sugiyuchi Junji. That's right. Sugiyuchi this whole time was a Yakuza in disguise, being part of the Unosewa clan. And wouldn't you know it, Katsuragi was the one who planted those rubber bullets in Saejima's revolvers, meaning that Saejima didn't actually kill anyone, and instead it would be the combined efforts of Katsuragi finishing off his own men, and having Sugiyuchi shoot him in the shoulder to make sure that it didn't look like it was Katsuragi putting out the crime. But wouldn't you know it, my father, Taiki Tanimura, found out the truth behind this and was slain in cold blood. But, as my story goes, I would find out that it wouldn't be only my own father who found out about this mishap and this calculation of murder. It was none other than the original Deputy Commissioner of Tokyo PD, Seishiro Murakata, who found that out all the way back in 1985, and would then blackmail Sugiyuchi and use him, along with Katsuragi, to hatch a plot decades later in 2010. And so, Sugiyuchi murdered my father and continued his own path in law enforcement, his own career. And what did you know it, Sugiyuchi actually became a pretty well-regarded detective at Kamurocho PD. So much so that he would even stick it to old friends of mine like Akiyama, tell him to stay out of this case that was rising, involving Seishiro Munakata. And well, I gotta say, despite having resentment and my own peril in learning that Sugiuchi murdered my own father. I gotta say, I could tell that Sugiuchi was a conflicted man this whole time. Even 15 years later, and looking back on our fight, I can tell there was a good man underneath all the heavy weights of scars he was holding within him. And in his final moments, I distinctly remember Sugiuchi telling me in his soliloquy he was hoping to find some peace, and telling me his whole story, this whole corruption, this whole conspiracy he was put into by Seishiro Munakata.
That's right, Tanimura, you parasite, you. Now, I'll dive into the rest of the scheme and context of this event in the underworld. Sugiuchi is what I'd call the highlight boss of Yakuza 4's story in terms of build-up and giving us a revelation we've been hoping to discover in the plot. He's similar in structure and even gameplay-wise to Joji Kazuma's boss fight in Yakuza 3. Both are cinematic, take the fight to a unique setting, and even have movesets that will punish you if you fight mindlessly. Additionally, they're both succeeded by fights that lead into the final chapters, then start to really ramp up. And oh yeah, I'll add that the speedboat fight between Tanimura and Sugiuchi is a lot of fun too. It's a nice way to build off the car battles in Yakuza 1 and Yakuza 2. So while Sugiuchi may come across as a stern jackass throughout the 2010 Munakata incident, it makes sense considering he's had to essentially live a fake career as a police detective boss, while being fully aware that the deputy commissioner has his skeletons in his closet by the balls. Balls out. Not only that, but you can see that past the malice and violence he gives Tanimura during their climactic confrontation, Sugiuchi in turn was just trying to warn the Justice Man several times throughout the story to stay away from this conspiracy. And alas, in Sugiuchi's final moments, it was clear that he lamented the life he's had, as he was still a Yakuza at heart, and one that did murder Tanimura's adopted father. Although Sugiuchi also mentioned how, despite never wanting to be a police officer, it still felt good to him to help civilians and make the streets safer. That part of his final speech says a lot about who Sugiuchi was beneath the facade, and that it was Katsuragi who was the more explicitly aggressive one in their dynamic. Especially if you look back at the 1985 flashback, where it was pretty much Katsuragi who took upon himself to murder his own clan members after Saejima was arrested. To put it short, perhaps Sugiuchi could have been a genuine detective in another lifetime.
I'll stop you right there, Mr. TDF. Sugiuchi was actually conflicted like any of us are. Sure, he may have had the clothes and lifestyle that detective money couldn't just afford, meaning he was clearly involved with a third party this whole time. However, he was still a detective who tried to do the right thing, even if that meant getting blood on his hands. And he was a product of blackmail, ultimately, and stuck in a bigger, wider web of conspiracy than he knew he was going to get himself into. It's not easy, but years later, I can rest easy knowing that Sugiuchi was able to find some peace at his final moments. Letting the truth out is never easy. You can often take it for granted, but you never know what relief it'll bring to you once you let it out. Corruption is everywhere, and it's clear from today that it can come to us at every angle. And well, Mr. TDF, corruption is a force that'll take anyone with it, especially unsuspecting communities just trying to survive in a harsh, concrete jungle. Take me, for instance. I've lost both a birth father and an adopted father due to the city underworld and its dealings. The hand of the underworld always takes more with it than initially wants. And well, the Munakata situation of 2010 took the lives of many, such as Saejima Yasuko, Hisai Satoshi, and Hamazaki Go, including Sugiuchi Junji. It's a terrible thing to see, and unfortunately corruption just doesn't go away so easily. However, you can bet that whenever corruption comes around again, I'll bring my own hand of justice right towards it. Don't fall for a selfish deed. Instead, have a little faith. Tanimura! Oh, Tanimura! What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, Tanimura! Tanimura! What are you doing? Your work has been beautiful, my friend. Why are you trying to tamper with my fuse box? I said I'd let you go, remember? Oh, I remembered all right. The exit is right over there behind that secret door. I'm revealing it right now. Oh, I've got one more piece of intel just for you, Mr. TDF. Tell me. What? What? Do you like boss coffee? You've seen my labyrinth, Tanimura. Look, it's full of empty wine and even beer bottles. When do I have time for coffee? I'm walking ahead with pride to the next stage. And it's time for you, Mr. TDF, to sober up. You parasite! Tanimura!